on behalf of NESSP, we would like to thank you for coming to visit us. My name is Nitin Vijay. I am a student at Acton-Boxborough Regional High School, and I'm in 9th grade. So my first question is, housing has become a real problem, with inflation causing many families unable to afford housing. So how do you plan on ending this crisis?
Nitin, thank you for the question. I have to tell you guys, as I've been on the campaign trail now for 9+ months, and I don't think there's a single city or town across the state that I've been to where someone doesn't ask me about housing, right? Some version of that question. There's a deep, deep anxiety that I hear from families across the state, from individuals, from our large cities, to our very rural communities. This is a problem where we see that elders are getting, priced out of the communities that they have spent, decades making wonderful. And we see young people and immigrants who cannot find a place to rent or to put down roots and start to build equity. We see municipal workers, police, fire, other municipal workers who can't afford to live in the communities that they serve in many cases. So it's a big, big problem. There are several things that I propose to do and that we would do under a Chang-Diaz administration. There's no one silver bullet to solve this problem. There are things that we have to do at the same time. Fortunately, I think we got a lot of smart people here in Massachusetts where we can do more than one thing at a time. So part of the problem is we just need to build more houses, right? We don't have enough houses for all of the people, and so the gap between demand and supply is driving the price up. So building more is going to require things like doing some zoning reform, right? To make it more, to sort of lower the barriers for people who want to build more housing in Massachusetts. And we also need to have better funding streams from the state so that we can build not just more housing for luxury housing, but more affordable housing in our state. So there's actually a bill that is called the HERO Act, the HERO Coalition Act. And what it would do is increase the fee that happens when a real estate transaction happens, right, when a property is sold, and put the proceeds of that increased fee and split it 50-50 between affordable housing development, gets 50% of the money, and climate mitigation projects get the other 50% of the money. So it's a really smart pairing of two important issues right now. There's also creative things like land trusts, which is a partnership between public sector can help fund it, and nonprofits buying land in communities that are where the price of land and housing is going up really fast, and gaining control so that they can keep that land affordable and deed restricted, for future generations. And then I would say the last piece, it's not the only piece, but I know that our time is short, so I'll give you the summary, is that I think transportation is a really big part of the puzzle here. We have to make it easier for people to live in one place and work in another place, so that we can expand the area in the state where housing solutions are possible. Does that make sense? Yeah.
All right. So my next question is, racism is still a big problem in our state, with many incidents of police brutality and hate towards people of color. So how do you plan on implementing police reform laws and fixing our justice system?
So this is another great question, and it's hope-giving to me that you're asking this question, right? And this is a question that it's not unusual for young people to ask this. I will tell you guys that I was I'm thinking back to a little over 2 years ago, in the wake of the murder of George Floyd. You guys will probably remember, right, all of the street protests and the Black Lives Matter movement that really called out, people in government to do better, right, and to put systemic reforms in place. And this is one of the examples that I give when I'm out on the campaign trail, that even though people are really frustrated about politics, and mostly I'm impatient with politics, that's why I'm running for governor, right, because I don't think we're moving fast enough and responding deeply enough to crises like these. But I've seen breakthrough moments happen enough times in my 13 years in office that I really believe that it's possible for us to move with more urgency on more problems. Racial justice is one of those examples. And it shouldn't have taken, an egregious, horrific murder on video, right, for all of America to see in order to catalyze this to happen. But it did. And it gave us a moment where there was enough urgency in the public that it pushed us on Beacon Hill. And I was one of the architects, one of the drafters of the police reform law, and then one of the chief negotiators of the police reform law that we got through that year in just a few months after the murder of George Floyd. And it's now a national model for the whole country. We didn't get everything that I wanted in that bill, but there are a lot of really important forms like a ban on chokeholds and curtailing the use of no-knock warrants and putting in place an affirmative duty to intervene so that when a police officer sees another police officer abusing power, that the first officer has a duty to intervene and report it. And then we also have now in Massachusetts the only police oversight board in the nation that is civilian controlled at the state level, that has subpoena power. So if there are, if there is an officer that is abusing power, that complaint can go to a civilian controlled body in order to review that and now licensure and delicensure are both options in our state for police officers. And I want to say, because I have tremendous respect for the officers in the room here, that, I think of this a lot like politics. There are a lot of people, there are some people who are elected officials who don't always do the right thing, right? And I'm not here to make excuses for those politicians who don't do the right thing, right? We need to have a profession. I'm here to try to rebuild, the trust that people have in politics. And the same is true for every profession, right? Grocers, dentists, police officers, teachers, right? We're all human beings. And human beings are, frail. And we need to have a system that can look in the mirror and acknowledge that and lift up those who are doing good in their profession. And, for those who aren't, maybe that's not the right profession for them. But we need to make sure that the whole profession is not tainted by individuals who are making bad choices, and then if the system is covering up for that, that's when we get into problems. And so we need to make sure that the system is demanding, rigor and honor from all of these professions.
It's a great pleasure to meet you. My name's Adith Anand. I'm an 8th grader. I study in Blanchard Middle School in Westford, Massachusetts. So the first question I have for you is, recently the leading cause for teen death has become gun violence. So how do you plan to remediate this issue?
You guys are asking good questions. And that doesn't surprise me one bit. I used to teach 8th grade social studies, and I know that young people, they'll mess around, right? They'll be honest with questions. So, I represent currently a state Senate district that is one of the districts in the state, if not the district in the state, that suffers most from gun violence. And so this is an issue that is very, very close to home, very personal to me. I've been to more funerals of 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 13-year-olds, 17-year-olds than I care to count in my 13 years in the state Senate. And this is why gun safety legislation has been a very important through line of my work over the years. I've, for many years, filed a law that would limit the number of guns that any one person can buy in Massachusetts over the course of a year, because we know that this is one of the sources of guns moving from the legal market in Massachusetts to the illegal market, is when people bulk purchase legally and then they sell them to the illegal market. So that's just one example of the things that we need to do to constrain the pipeline to the illegal market. We also need to do better on the prevention end for young people, right? So that we need to get rid of the easy supply of guns in our communities. But I can't tell you how many times I hear, I'm a former teacher, and I spent 8 years as the chair of the education committee, how often I hear from parents, from teachers, from school leaders, that the trauma and the mental health stresses that young people are carrying in their lives are immense, right? So we need to do a lot better at mental and emotional support, health services and supports for young people, so they aren't tempted to pick up a gun in the first place.
Thank you for that.
My name is Shrieker. I'm a junior at Lowell Catholic High School. So my question is, Massachusetts has recently had a spike in opioid-related overdoses and deaths. How do you plan to attack the opioid problem in the state, and how do you plan to help current opioid addicts?
Yeah, Shrikar, thank you for the question. It's a great, I think, you can see the relationship between these two. And if we can get things right on the prevention end of the spectrum, we're going to do a lot better, right? By bringing down people who are falling into addiction in the first place, right? If we can put much more robust social, emotional, wraparound services, mental health services, behavioral health services, starting, right, for young people. But then also continuing on into adulthood. And one of the, again, this is not, a silver bullet, it's not the only thing, but we need to treat and be, constant and consistent in this, recognizing addiction as a public health issue, right? Not a moral failing, it's an illness. And we would never, allow someone to walk around with a broken leg, right, not getting treated. In our Commonwealth, and we need to treat addiction and mental health and emotional health issues the same way, and that we should have parity in our healthcare systems for mental health as well as for physical health. A big reason we don't have that right now is that we don't have enough workforce to provide mental and behavioral health services in Massachusetts to match the demand. We have, and again, coming back to young people, we have young people who will sit in emergency rooms across the state for days and weeks, sometimes months at a time, waiting for a mental health placement outside of the emergency room. And there just aren't enough service providers who will do that. So one of the things that I'm proposing on the campaign trail, and that will be a big priority for me as governor, is debt-free public college for all Massachusetts students. And that may not sound directly, connected to the opioid crisis, but it's a big way that we can get more people into caregiving professions, is bringing down the cost of getting credentialed, getting the higher education that you need to go into those fields, so that we don't have such a shortage of whether it's psychologists, psychiatrists, counseling services, but also caregivers in a lot of different professions. So this is a problem. This is a solution actually that would that would bring down the need in a lot of different fields, opioid crisis included.
Hello, my name is Sai Nagari, and I'm a 10th grader at the Acton-Boxborough Regional High School. And my first question for you is that even though we have made tremendous progress in recent years, gender equality is still a major problem. So how do you plan on tackling this issue?
By being the first elected woman governor in Massachusetts. But look, I say that, look, this is an important barrier for us to break as a Commonwealth. It's a long time coming. So I mean it, that is a piece of the puzzle. But I don't pretend for a second that having, one person at the table of power is going to accomplish equity across the board, gender equality across the board. But this is something that I weave through all of my work. And it begins, I'm going to tie it back to the last question, right? One of the things that we, there's economic inequality that still exists between genders in this Commonwealth. Some of you may have heard of Equal Pay Day, right? This is the day in the year when the pay that women make catches up with the pay that men made last year, right? It takes extra days. Equal Pay Day for Black women is even later in the year. Equal Pay Day for Latinas is even later in the year. Equal Pay Day, my guess, for Southeast Asian women is somewhere, later in the year. So we have to get at the root, right? Because if we don't have that kind of economic empowerment for women in society, we're going to have trouble achieving equity and parity in a lot of other places. And so many of the professions that are still dominated by women, right? This gets back to my previous answer about caregiving professions, right? Teachers, nurses, personal care attendants, child caregivers, early educators. We pay these professions systematically, lower than professions that have historically been held by men. And so we need to raise the pay in these caregiving professions, and we need to lower the cost of going into those professions so that not so many women are carrying this incredible debt when they choose to go into caregiving work in our society. So that's just a little snippet. There are a lot of things we got to get right, but that's one example.
My name is AJ Patula, and I'm a junior at ABRHS, and I have one question for you. So as you run for governor, there's definitely going to be like younger kids and like especially like girls that are going to look up to you. So how do you hope to inspire them and like be a role model for them?
There's so much there. When I first started running for Senate, there was one of my advisors, who also a woman, who cared deeply about me and wanted me to succeed in my political career, and she advised me, Sonia, I think that we need to have you wear different earrings, because those big old hoops are kind of distracting for people, and she was right in many ways. I think they were distracting for people because I didn't look like what they expected a state Senate candidate to look like, whether on their TV or on their doorstep. And I thought about it. I really gave it some hard thought because I knew in some cases people might dismiss me, before I even kind of got my proverbial foot in the door there. But I decided not to, and I said, no, I'm going to keep wearing these hoops because it's important that people acquire a different picture of what a state Senate candidate might look like. And that may be harder for me to win this election, but I'm going to widen the path for women of color who are coming behind me. And so I think that's one of the best things that I can do, right, for young women who are coming up behind me is to bring my whole self to this work and to do it with authenticity and without apology. For all of the different pieces of identity that I bring to this work. And hopefully that will widen the path, day by day, year by year. And by bringing these hoops into the governor's office, that is going to make it more possible for women, not just, who wear big old hoops like me, right, but women who look different in many kinds of ways, or just, women who look different by being women, right, because all of the portraits in the State House right now of past governors, there's one portrait of a former female governor, and I want to give her props, right, because she widened the path for me. She was not elected to the governorship. She came in because she was the lieutenant governor, and then the governor left, and so she came into that seat. But she broke a boundary, nonetheless, for me and for others. And with this election, we can break another boundary of having the first elected female governor in office.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Senator Chang-Diaz, for your valuable time this evening. And thank you, Mr. Sam Kwan, for your valuable time. And Fire Chief Steele McCurdy, thank you, Chief. And Deputy Chief of Groton Police, Deputy Chief Rachel Belecki, thank you all. And I think I owe a little apology to the kids over here. They were prepared with so many questions. Because she has a busy schedule. We already are over time, but thank you for accommodating the extra time, and thank you for your understanding, kids. And thank you all for being such a wonderful audience. And Senator Chang-Diaz, we wish you all the best for your political career. And kids, wish you all the best for your bright future. Thank you all.